In Iran, women are literally braving and risking their lives to defy the hijab. And in India, women have petitioned the Supreme Court for the right to wear one. From Iran to India, how do we understand the debate around the hijab? I'm Barkha Dutt. You're with the Mojo Story. This is our big focus on the program today. Why did this photograph of Rahul Gandhi with a young child wearing a hijab become such a point of discussion? How do we understand the contrast with the images that we are seeing out of Iran, where women are chanting death to the dictator, burning the hijab, literally creating bonfires of their hijabs, and also cutting their hair to protest the enforced wearing of the headscarf? In fact, 5 women have died, and there have been street protests since the tragic death of one of them, Mahsa Amini, only 22 years old, after her arrest by the country's morality police. But in India, in Karnataka, a very, very different storm has ensued. And this storm has led some Muslim women's groups to petition the Supreme Court and say, this is an essential tenet of our faith. Let us decide whether we want to wear the hijab. Do not keep us out of school on the basis of this. Do not tell us not to wear the hijab if we want an education. On the program today, we ask what India can learn from Iran, and we pose a question that is bound to annoy some, but we must ask it nevertheless. Have India's progressives, have India's liberals, have India's feminists got it wrong on the hijab? What does choice really mean in the gender debate when so many of us are products of cultural conditioning and patriarchy to varying degrees? Let's introduce our guests on the program today. Tavleen Singh, author, columnist, and a trenchant critic of the hijab, is with us. Also joining us on the program is a Nargis Khatun. She's a student at the JNU, and as you can see, Nargis does wear a hijab. So we'll try and understand a little bit more from her on what made her choose to do so. Also joining us on the program is well-known lawyer Anas Tanvir. He's an advocate who's been directly involved in this particular case. He's worked on the petition by a group of young Muslim women who have gone to the Supreme Court and asked for the right to wear one to their educational institutions. And that case, by the way, the hearing is over today, and the Supreme Court has reserved its order. Also joining us is Wall Street Journal columnist Sadanand Dhume, whose comments on the young child walking with Rahul Gandhi have offended people across the spectrum, and we'll be asking him some tough questions about that tweet. And also joining us is Karuna Nundy, who's of course one of our best known lawyers as well as gender rights activists, and it's great to see all of you on the program. Before I get started, I had the good fortune to be able to talk with an Iranian activist who is now forced to live in exile under 24/7 protection of the FBI. She's one of the key architects of the revolution against the hijab in Iran, a revolution that is now really being fought by the women who are inside Iran. I'm talking about Amasi Elinajad, who actually told me that she and others like her are ready to die if they must. That's how strongly they feel against the hijab. Listen in.
Now it's not just women individually protesting. It's not like lonely soldiers. Like everywhere across Iran, you see that women are together. Men are shoulder to shoulder with women. Women are burning headscarves. Women are burning like the main visible symbol of oppression. And for me, it's like I'm ready to die because the dream comes true. I wanted women to be united. I wanted men and women to get together because together we are stronger than the oppressors. And now I don't care about my life. I'm not scared of my life.
Indian liberals have gotten wrong when it comes to the hijab. I want to start by a tweet that has been posted by Sadanand Dhume. Let's bring up that tweet I can, and I'm going to read out. It's quite a storm. and while I have kind of complex views on the hijab, I want to actually read this out. Has Rahul Gandhi learned nothing to do collective intellectual thrashings? This photo suggests that the Congress fights not for the right of ordinary Muslims, but first and foremost for fundamentalist Islam. Regular Muslims do not sexualize little girls by covering them up. Now, let me actually take this, Sadanand, this language where you see a young child, she's wearing a hijab. She's too young to have decided whether to wear the hijab or not. It could be a cultural tradition, it could be a religious belief, but bringing in a kind of a reference to sexualization. Do you not think that your choice of words has been unfortunate? You may have been trying to make a different point about the hijab being connected with modesty, as Karuna subsequently pointed out in her commentary. But do you not think that your choice of words was most unfortunate? What exactly were you trying to say, and why did you choose these words? This is a child we're talking about. What did you want Rahul Gandhi to do? Not talk to a child because she's wearing a hijab?
Well, Barkha, I'm glad you asked this question. I mean, first of all, obviously, I do not regret my words. If I did, I would have, issued some kind of clarification. I think some people may have a slight comprehension issue, and maybe that's why they're sort of misinterpreting them. To be clear, obviously, when a girl is that young, it's not as though she has made the choice. This is obviously something that has been foisted on her by her parents. That's sort of typically the case. But the larger point I'm making, which is sort of seems to have got swallowed up, is that if you look at what the hijab is supposed to do, and in fact, if you look at Muslim communities across the world, there is a reason why it is very rare, it is relatively rare, for hijab to be introduced at a very young age in prepubescent girls. And the reason for that is that the whole idea behind hijab is that women are not supposed to quote unquote tempt men, right? And that's supposed to be the sort of that's the notion. Now, when you place that burden on a young child, in my view, what you are effectively doing is placing the burden of an adult woman on a young child, and that is a form of sexualization. I'm not saying that the girl has become sexy or running some nonsense like that. I'm making a factual statement about what hijab signifies, or what's the root behind the sort of the need for hijab in the first place, and how it is not a very common or normal occurrence to impose this kind of head to toe covering, no hair showing kind of sort of philosophy on a young girl. I mean, if you travel around the Muslim world, and you'll find this is very, very, very rare. Even in families that do choose the hijab, forget the families that don't choose the hijab. Even among families that do choose the hijab, this is not very common. And the larger point I made was not even about whether what the girl is wearing or not wearing, but was whether a mainstream national politician like Rahul Gandhi should be seen as mainstreaming or condoning what many people, including myself, would regard as a regressive practice. I don't think you should. I think it's politically stupid. And that's the point I made. All the rest is just noise.
Yeah, but do you still, sometimes you may want to make an argument, and these are of course images out of Iran. If we can come out of this and now go back to our panel, sometimes you may want to make a different point, but you choose the wrong words to do so. And I understand the association that you're trying to draw between the fact that the hijab is intrinsically connected to the idea of modesty, and therefore the fact that modesty is now expected of children is, I guess, what you're trying to say, a kind of sexualization of a young child. But when you say it the way you said it, what most people looking at your tweet looked at it and said, you, Sadanand, are the one sexualizing this child. There are people on this panel who actually said that about you, and I want you to respond to that.
So I think that's nonsense. I think, though, the people are free to interpret language the whichever way they like. I think my what I said was in plain English. I think that anybody who has even the smidgen of good faith interpretation would know exactly what I'm saying. Now, sort of, there's a style of argument that's quite common, particularly on Twitter, is to sort of pick up something and then twist it and then start calling people names. I mean, that's been done to all of us. That's just part of being in the public square. I allow people to do that. What can I do?
Okay, as we were sitting down for this program, I think there were very heated sort of reservations, Sadanand's tweet and so on. But intriguingly, Karuna, you actually saw some I want to say merit, but I'll let you explain, yourself, the parts of it that you actually said made sense. And of course, this program is not about Sadanand's tweet, but I want to kind of get that, in a sense, out of the way so we can actually focus on the issue at hand. Karuna, go ahead.
I actually saw, I think it's very important in all of this to listen to what hijabi women have to say. Because I think in the court case, I think it's great that they are being represented by Anas and others. But I think we just don't have enough of that. We don't have enough of that in Sabrimala. We don't hear enough from the worshippers of Lord Ayyappa, for example. And Indu Malhotra actually made the point. Even though fundamentally, I agree mostly with Justice Chandrachud's judgment and Justice Rohinton Nariman's decision in another case, saying that any religious practice, whether it's essential or not, any practice must adhere to the basic flaw of fundamental rights. How, of course, the content of that fundamental right, I think, must be determined by reference to what the population concerned wants. Because every population in India, even the rich Savarna, Hindu, able-bodied men, even them, right, have constraints. And everyone operates within constraints. Hijabi women operate within more constraints than the rest of us, right? We operate, upper caste women with privilege, like me, operate within certain constraints. And to take away, under a sort of paternalistic notion of constitutional saviorism, some of those choices that people have, thereby restricting what's available to me further, that is a real problem. With regard to Sadanand's tweets, honestly, I completely disagreed with, his main thrust. Sadanand, I'm sorry, I don't want to throw you under the bus, but I said this on Twitter as well. The main thrust being that Rahul Gandhi should not have taken a picture with this young girl. I think that is ridiculous. I mean, the whole point of the constitutional case is do not exclude women based on what they are wearing, given that, education and empowerment is likely to go down in this case, right? And if it is a conscientiously held belief, then don't exclude women and young girls, who want to participate from public life. I think that's just the bottom line here. So is it ill-advised, Rahul Gandhi? Absolutely not. But when he said this point about, I don't think it was well put, but the fundamental point he was making is, I think it should be well taken, which is that emerges, where does the prohibition emerge from? And it's not a prohibition, it's if the surahs were read out at the Supreme Court, etc. And what was said was that it is about modesty, right? And if the injunction, if the requirement of modesty means that somebody conscientiously feels that they must wear a hijab, or not go to school, or not go to work, or not go to a political rally, then are you going to say, take off the hijab or else? Of course, there is the issue of false consciousness. And let's come to that. Let us come to that. Let us talk about heels. Let us talk about my bindi. Let us talk about, the fact that every woman on this panel is wearing lipstick, Frankly, false consciousness and free will is something I think is important to talk about. We must talk about. Only the Muslim community cannot be targeted on this basis.
Okay, I think that's something I actually said in the beginning, that we're all products to varying degrees of cultural conditioning and a patriotic culture, and we change as we grow older, as we get exposure, as we joust with ideas. I do need to open this up, but Sadanand, very briefly, to actually the meat of the matter of your tweet. The controversy was all around your choice of word on why sexualize a little child, and I think we've established that the point here was the connection between hijab and an imagined idea of female modesty. But moving on, you actually thought it was poor politics by Rahul Gandhi. Are you actually suggesting that this child, who's presumably had no control at her age over whether to wear a hijab or not, should not be treated in a friendly, inclusive way by India's politicians? What's her, even if she has been forced or conditioned to wear a hijab, by your own argument, she's already a victim of patriarchy. Why should she be doubly punished by being shunned by politicians?
Well, look, I don't think that any child, regardless of the parents' political persuasion, should be treated with anything but love, affection, and kindness, right? Obviously, like if I came across someone whose parents are in the, let's say, Bajrang Dal, and I come across a 5-year-old, I'm not going to mistreat the 5-year-old. I'm going to be nice to the 5-year-old. There's nothing wrong with that. But when it comes to tweeting an image, when it comes to sharing an image, these things they tend to be curated, and political parties should be careful. Let me just flip this around for a moment. Let's just say that in a thought experiment, Rahul Gandhi had met a little 5-year-old boy wearing an RSS uniform with a topi and a little stick. Is it the boy's fault? Obviously not. Would I expect a politician to be friendly to the child? Obviously. But if his party then went and shared a photograph of that, it would be sending a certain signal. It would be sending a political message. And in this particular case, it happens to reinforce a very old narrative about Congress, which is that for many years, Congress has been very progressive when it comes to reforming Hindu society, which I think is excellent. But they have been a little bit skittish when it comes to opposing fundamentalist strains in Islam. We've all talked about Shah Bano and Rushdie and all of that ad nauseum on your show and in other places. This particular incident, I think it fits. It's a part of that narrative. I happen to think that narrative is very harmful for Congress, and we've seen the results in 2 back-to-back elections. Karuna disagrees. That's fine.
Okay, can I now bring in the others? Before I bring in Anas, I must go to Nargis. Nargis, you're a student. May I ask how old you are?
22.
And if I may ask, how long have you been wearing the hijab?
I'm at the age of 13 or 14.
Okay.
Or
So,
earlier.
Nargis,
Yeah.
okay, Nargis, how do you look at this whole debate? Some people might say to you that if you started wearing a hijab at the age of 13, you were conditioned to do so from a very young age, as so many of us as women are conditioned to do so many things. It could be from, as Karuna said, wearing a bindi. In our mother's generations, a dupatta, by the way, was also linked to the idea of covering your breasts, even among Hindu and Punjabi Sikh women. So there are many ways of linking modesty or enforcing modesty on women culturally. But people might say to you, Nargis, that अगर आपने 13 साल की उम्र से पहना तो क्या ये सच्ची में choice है कि ये conditioning है? What would you say?
First thing is that कि hijab, it's not culture. Hijab, it's a part of Islam. And सबसे पहले में ये देखना होगा कि हिजाब है क्या आखिर. हम बेस में ही नहीं जाते हैं और इंडिया में आकर के इसको रिवाज और प्रथा ऐसा शुमार कर दिया जाता है, माना जाता है. हमें देखना होगा हिजाब है क्या आखिर. और सबसे पहली चीज़, जो भी मुस्लिम अगर प्रैक्टिस कर रहा है तो उसकी प्रैक्टिस में एक शामिल है, एक पार्ट है हिजाब. आप इसको ले जाएंगे क्यों, हम इसको हिजाब और लोगों ने कैसे किया और लोग कैसे करते थे, उससे पहले हम इसको देखते हैं कि आखिर हमारा दीन क्या कहता है, मज़हब क्या कहता है. और हम अपने मज़हब की बात मानने के लिए सबसे पहली जो थिंग है, बेसिक है, कुरान, उसे देखते हैं. तो हमारे कुरान में ही हमें नज़र आता है कि हाँ, उसमें हिजाब का हुक्म दिया गया है. तो उसी हिसाब से हम उसको फॉलो करते हैं. ये कोई हमारे ऊपर किसी तरह का बाउंड्री नहीं है, किसी तरह का बाउंडेशन नहीं है, कोई फोर्स नहीं करता है. बल्कि जब कोई इंसान किसी भी धर्म को, किसी भी रिलीजियस को फॉलो करना चाहता है तो वो देखता है कि आखिर उसका धर्म कहता क्या है. और मेरे हिसाब से जो मेरा धर्म कहता है, जो मेरा रिलीजन कहता है, मैं उसे फॉलो करना चाहती हूँ.
कल को अगर आपका धर्म, सॉरी मैं आपको मैं थोड़ा बीच में बोल रही हूँ, मेरा एक सवाल था कि अगर कल को आपका धर्म कुछ ऐसी बात कहे, मैं तो धर्म में विश्वास करती नहीं हूँ, लेकिन कल्चरली मैं एक पैदाइश हिंदू हूँ, और मेरे जैसे जो शादी के रिवाज है उसमें कन्यादान किया जाता है. लेकिन जब मेरी बहन ने शादी की तो उन्होंने कहा कि मैं कन्यादान नहीं करूंगी, मैं इसमें इस रीति में विश्वास नहीं रखती हूँ. तो मेरा कहने का मतलब है कि कल को अगर आपके धर्म में कुछ ऐसी चीज हो जिससे आप नहीं सहमत, तो क्या आपको हक नहीं? क्या धर्म, क्या रिलीजन एक स्टैटिक चीज है?
नहीं, सबसे पहले मानने की चीज़ है कि हमारे बहुत सी चीज़ें ऐसी होती हैं जिनको धर्म से जोड़ दिया जाता है और वो उसका पार्ट नहीं होती हैं, लेकिन कुछ चीज़ें एसेंशियल होती हैं, ज़रूरी होती हैं, जो धर्म का पार्ट होती हैं, और ये इंसान के बिलीफ पर डिपेंड करता है, जितना उसका बिलीव होगा। अगर आपने कोई धर्म लिया है, अगर आप हिंदुइज्म को फॉलो कर रहे हैं, तो आपको चाहिए कि उसके रूल्स को फॉलो करें। तो उसका ये बेसिक पार्ट है, इसमें कोई फोर्स और उसकी होने की बात नहीं है। और रही बात अच्छे और बुरे होने की, तो कोई भी धर्म कभी भी बुराई नहीं भेजता है, कोई भी धर्म बुरी बातें नहीं सिखाता। अगर कोई बुराई आती है तो आप उसको आउट ऑफ द रिलीजन मानेंगे, रिलीजन का पार्ट नहीं मान सकते।
मैं I'll just say, मैं अनस और तवलीन के पास जाना चाहती हूँ, but I will just say that I think all the orthodoxies of all religions actually militate against the rights of women. आप कोई भी धर्म उठा लीजिए, अगर आप उसका बिल्कुल ऑर्थोडॉक्स तबका देखेंगे, उसका बिल्कुल लिटरलिज्म इंटरप्रिटेशन देखेंगे, तो औरतों और आदमियों की इक्वल राइट्स नहीं है। तभी औरतों को ये रिवाज हिजाब का करना पड़ता है और आदमियों को नहीं करना पड़ता। तभी औरतों को दुपट्टा पहनना पड़ता है और मर्द लोग नहीं पहनते हिंदू धर्म में, राइट?
इसके पीछे मेन चीज यही है कि हिजाब को समझा नहीं गया है। आप हिजाब को समझें और धर्म क्या कहता है उसे समझें, उसके बाद आप कुछ बोल सकते हैं।
ओके, थैंक यू। ओके, आई जस्ट वांट टू टेक दिस टू अनस, बिकॉज जो आपने बार बार बात कही नरगिस की, ये इसेंशियल है, ये मेरे रिलीजन का एक इसेंशियल टेनेट है। अनस, आई हैव आर्ग्यूड विद यू अबाउट दिस बिफोर, सो यू नो व्हाट आई फील. I believe that girls cannot be kept out of school and college because they wear a hijab. You know that I believe this. But equally, I believe that that's not the petition that all of you have taken to court. You have gone to court arguing about whether this is an essential practice of Islam or not, as if to say that should determine the rights of women, which I just have to disagree with, just as I disagreed with Sabri Mala, which Karuna referenced.
No. That is not our contention. Matter of fact, if you have seen or followed the hearing in the Supreme Court, we have been repeatedly saying that our main contention is that the state does not have power to take away my right to wear hijab, and I'm not saying that and the court do not have the power to determine or neither the know how to determine the essential religious, whether it is essential or not to my religion, first of all. Second, before continuing to this, and I'll be covering other stuff, I want to bring on record my objection in being in the same frame as Mr. Dhume. I found his tweet not to just to be in a bad taste, but indicative of pedophilia, and I'm again going to reiterate that.
I mean, isn't that a very
third point?
No, I must come in there. I must come in there. I must, to be a fair moderator, I must come in there. I was tough on Sadanand. I must be equally tough in this use of the word pedophilia, because he has explained, and you've had context for that explanation, even if you misread the tweet, that he was talking about the linkage between hijab and modesty, and that is where the idea of the hijab springs from. Karuna,
Barkha, there is a term in Urdu
as anything but a liberal. Also,
Barkha,
but
nazar
you
ek cheez hoti hai, nazar.
You can't call someone a pedophile. You can't call someone a pedophile.
All right, I'll take that back and then I'll come back again.
Yes.
नजर का एक मसला होता है कि किसकी नजर कैसी है, वो नजर डिटरमाइन करती है वो इंसान क्या सोच रहा है। और साफ सीधी बात है, if young girls are wearing hijab today, it's because of existence of people like him in the society.
No, I don't understand how. I don't understand that. I don't actually understand that. I have to put on record that is again. I didn't agree with how Sadanand framed his tweet.
Problem is with,
I don't
then
agree
we should.
With, yeah, Karuna. Sorry, you're trying to say something, Karuna?
I was just trying to say that even if that were true, because I saw Anas, actually I saw your tweet. I saw your tweet, and because I saw Sadanand's tweet, and I thought, okay, this is unfortunate and whatever, But then I saw your tweet, and I felt, and I looked at Sadanand's tweet again, and as I said, I completely disagree with half of it. I reflected on the two ways in which it could mean something, right? One way is, to some extent, more akin to yours. Not that I don't think there's any interpretation, according to me, that indicates that he's a pedophile or he has a sexual gaze. But that
he is the only one who saw it as sexualizing.
He's explaining.
Even Sambit Patra did not say that. Even the right-wing, BJP right-wing did not say that.
I don't think we should be reduced to, to discussing this one tweet when there is a much larger issue at stake. But I think that
please come back. I will be on the larger issue also.
But I must say,
one view is protecting young girls from sexual gazes in general. And I think that is, one of the ways in which, one of the reasons for which people clothe little children in hijabs, right? But I think that even if one thinks that society is so bad and there are pedophiles all around, that can we hinder the sort of little children running around and climbing trees and do whatever they will?
Yeah.
No,
Right?
but why presume that the kids are being forced to wear that hijab? Isn't that a presumption? You don't understand, none of you sitting here except for Nargis, understand our faith. You don't know my society. Please understand the difference.
Can I come in on the
Please
law?
appreciate your privileges.
Can I come in on the
There's
law?
a difference.
Okay, can I speak
Please.
now? Please?
I haven't
You
even
feel
finished.
a 5 or 6-year-old has the ability to decide, let's come in on the law.
Guys,
Please allow me to speak, Barkha.
Okay, yes.
I'm not done. I mean, if this has to be like Arnab to Arnab debate, then it's a different matter altogether.
No,
please.
we are trying for it not to be that. And if we avoid sort of slandering each other.
No, there is no slandering. There's interpretation of a tweet. It's my interpretation. Karuna disagrees. I respect that.
Okay, I have to move on. Tavleen, and then I'll come back to you, Anas, on the law. Tavleen.
All right.
Tavleen,
now,
I'll come back to Anas on the law.
I totally actually understood what Sadanand was saying because I happened to cover the Shah Bano case very closely. Rajiv Gandhi had two choices. One was led by Arif Muhammad Khan and Muslims like Arif Muhammad Khan, who said, please don't listen to the fundamentalists. They are wrong. This woman is just asking for a small amount of money from a very rich lawyer. And Rajiv went with the fundamentalists. And to me, when I saw Sadanand's tweet, that's what it meant. But I want to really get something, here, which has not been in the debate. One, the women of India, particularly Muslim women, should be standing with Iranian women at the moment. Look what's going on there. We should be speaking up for them. We should be speaking up for Afghan women who can't go to school anymore. And here we are going on and on about something that is a regressive practice. Every time men decide what women should wear, whether it's, in some school, girls being told to make their skirts longer or, put their blouses, wear long sleeves, it is wrong. And I'm sorry, but the hijab thing, even within Islam, is not, it's meant to be used. And you can ask a scholar, they will tell you more. And at the moment, what you're doing is using this as a political weapon. At the moment, ever since 9/11, the first thing you see with the arrival of radical Islam is the attire. It changes. I've seen it on Marine Drive.
Can I push back?
And secondly, can I also make the point that in India, women wore a burqa. They didn't dress like Arab women. At the moment, look at the hijab that Nargis is wearing. It's straight out of Saudi Arabia, right?
Okay,
so, please, excuse me. We had in India a kind of, women wore the burqa, no one said anything. Why are we allowing Wahhabism to influence Indian Islam
at
the time Saudis are moving away?
I have a question for you. Can you decontextualize the way young Muslims even, women among them, identify with the hijab as an identity marker from a larger environment where they find themselves marginalized? Is it possible for us to have a feminist conversation that is devoid of the political context? That's a very important question for me to ask you, Tavleen, irrespective of where we stand on the hijab.
I don't understand what your question is. What do you mean?
The question is that a number of Muslims today might say this is our identity. Forget what the religion says. This is our identity, and we want to hold on to this identity because we're finding ourselves marginalized and underrepresented in the political spaces, in the public discourse. We're vilified on primetime television. So this is an identity marker. And I'm asking you this because
if they wear an identity that clearly makes them look different, that's going to help. I mean, that's going to help. I see women, young girls in villages in India in jeans now, because they find salwar kameez too cumbersome. So Hindu girls from conservative, semi-literate families wear jeans in India. the ones that are sticking out for moving backwards are only Muslim women. And they need to be very careful about what they're arguing for. Why are they not in support of how hijab has been used as a weapon in countries like Afghanistan and Iran? It's a very, very bad, it's not a good idea. It's like saying, that in the Hindu religion, and by the way, the sati thing, the same thing happened. There were a lot of Rajmatas and all who said, no.
But what about the dupatta? What about the dupatta?
It's not
what
necessary.
About a number of Punjabi women cover their heads with their dupattas?
Yeah, well, it's not necessary. They go into a gurdwara and do it. They don't do it when they're working in the fields. They don't do it when they're playing a sport.
Okay, Anas, on the law, sorry, didn't let you complete that point. On the law, I want to ask you, and then I want to come to Nargis and Karuna and Sadanand. We have very limited time. Anas, on the law, what's the central point of law that you're looking for intervention from the Supreme Court on?
See, I will not be in a position to comment on the Supreme Court hearing because I'm a lawyer and the matter remains sub judice. So I will not be going into the merit of it on this show. But I will tell you one thing. First of all, there is no minimum age for me to exercise my fundamental right. You cannot say that these are kids, so you take away their right, neither in school nor in the political process. Another point, as Tavleen said, radical Islam and all, please, you have no right to compartmentalize my community. Those who supported the radical Hindutva until their own house was on fire have no right to comment on that. All of it is being taken into a different direction altogether. Coming back to Iran, coming back to what is happening in Iran, I will just make one single point.
I'm sorry, you called Sadanand the pedophile. Now you say I was supporting radical Hindutva.
You have supported the BJP RSS in 2014. That's on record.
Sorry.
Why are we personalizing this conversation?
Anyway, not personalizing. I'm coming back to what is happening on Iran. One point on what is the law. As simple as that. The religion mandates it. The religion mandates it, but there is no coercion. There cannot be a coercion. You cannot be forced to wear hijab.
I'll come to you in a second.
It's really wrong, Barkha, that you're allowing him to get away with making personal comments.
I am doing the best. I am actually doing the best I can right now to keep this conversation within a framework of civility. And maybe I'm not doing a great job, but I'm trying really hard. Believe me. So I'm really requesting.
Do not compartmentalize us with radical Islam. Don't do that.
Anas, you can't say that anyone who disagrees. Anas, you can't say surely that anyone who disagrees with
Barkha,
is somehow a fascist.
If my community is being attacked, I will have to respond. For long we have remained servile and silent. It has to be responded to, and not just the right wing, but also the liberals who fail to understand. Please understand. I'm making a point on Iran. I'm giving you a point of law.
Are you saying there is no radical Islam? Are you saying that there has been no radicalization?
I'm saying you have no right to comment on it. I'm saying there is no radical Islam. Anyone who is wearing hijab, you are questioning this girl sitting here. You are calling what she is wearing as a representative of radical Islam. She is sitting right here in front of you in the same place.
Your responses have been extremely sort of almost as dictatorial as the right wing that you criticize.
I'm sorry.
You criticize. Can I speak, Anas?
Please go ahead.
Okay. I understand that this causes a level of agitation, but I do not understand why you feel the need to name, and this applies to everybody. Why do we feel the need to name call somebody who doesn't look at something the same way? You cannot tell another person you can't speak. Equally, Tavleen, it could be said to you that you can't say to Nargis what she has done or not done. So why are we speaking on behalf of other people? Why can't we just say what we think and let other people respond? So Anas, when you say Tavleen doesn't have the right to say this, that's just wrong. Why don't you make your argument? Make your argument, let Nargis make hers, and let everybody make their own argument. It can't be so complicated. Now, Nargis, I'm going to come to you. Nargis, there is a question raised about an increasing Wahhabism, and I will say I've seen it happening in the Kashmir Valley, which I have reported on for decades. I have seen the difference in how women used to dress and how women dress today. There is a change. There is a change, and there's a sense of a kind of Arabization of an Islam that we knew very differently in the subcontinent. Please do respond to that point.
Sorry, I can't understand your question.
Okay, the question is that there is more Arab influence. ये अरब इन्फ्लुएंस, जो एक वहाबी इन्फ्लुएंस आज हमारी जो एक गंगा जमुना तहसीब थी, इस्लाम अलग किस्म का था, वो आज एक वहाबी अरबाइज्ड इन्फ्लुएंस जो अरबी दुनिया है उसका इन्फ्लुएंस है, उस पर आप क्या बोलेंगे?
देखिए, जो ये रुख जा रहा है कि वहाबिज्म आ रहा है, उसको ये आप ऐसे अदर मुस्लिम्स के ऊपर आप तो उसको मिला नहीं सकते ना। जो एक मुस्लिम्स हैं, जो उनका फंडामेंटल है, जो वो फॉलो कर रहे हैं, उनको आप उनसे कैसे, दूसरे मुस्लिम से कैसे मिला सकते हैं? अगर वहाबिज्म है उसमें कुछ उसका अलग वो है, लेकिन आप फंडामेंटल को देखेंगे, आप इस्लाम को देखेंगे कि वो क्या कहता है, उसका मानने वाले क्या कहते हैं, उनका फंडामेंटल क्या कहता है। अगर इस्लाम में कोई भी अदर थिंग्स ऐड हो रही हैं, क्या कोई भी दूसरी चीज़ें मिला सकता है? इस्लाम में नहीं मिला सकता है। दूसरी चीज़ें मिला करके उसको आप पार्ट क्या देंगे इस्लाम का, तो वो नहीं हो जाएंगी ना। तो इसी वजह से हमें ये देखना होगा कि इस्लाम क्या कहता है। बेसिक हमें रूट समझना होगा। जब हम रूट समझेंगे तो आगे कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं होगी। आज यही यहाँ पर हो रहा है कि बहुत सी एक्स्ट्रा चीज़ें इस्लाम में दाखिल करके उन्हें बोला जा रहा है कि दिस इज अ पार्ट्स ऑफ इस्लाम, ये इस्लाम है, वहाबीज इस्लाम है। वहाबीज इस्लाम अगर लोग मान रहे हैं तो देखिए कि उसमें वो कुछ भी आप किसी भी रिलीजन में ऐड करके उससे बोल देंगे कि इसका पार्ट है और इसको हर मुस्लिम पे आप उसमें ऐड कर देंगी। नहीं, हमें ये देखना होगा कि मेन इस्लाम क्या कहता है। लोग यही नहीं समझते हैं कि इस्लाम में कहा क्या जा रहा है। इसी वजह से ही
सॉरी मैं, क्योंकि टाइम कम है, तो मैं सदानंद, तवलीन और करुणा के पास जाना चाहती हूँ इन दैट ऑर्डर. Sadanand, one of the points you made is there's been talk of radical Islam. One of the points you made is that you can't take on the politics of Hindutva by actually sort of not calling out what you believe are the elements of radical Islam or hardline Islam. Do you believe, or do you see the hijab, even when people like Nargis, women like Nargis say हम खुद अपनी मर्जी से पहनते हैं, and I know मर्जी is a loaded word, we've gone into that. Do you see that as an example of radicalism? Is that the point you're making, Sadanand?
Barkha, it's a very complicated question. Like, obviously, at an individual level, I respect Nargis's right to wear whatever she believes and follow her faith according to how she interprets it. But the fact is that if you pull back and you look not just at India, but if you look at Indonesia, Egypt, Iran, Afghanistan, you look at the entire world, the hijab in many ways is a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it is certainly true that there are many women who, like Nargis, would simply view this as an essential item of their faith and choose to embrace it. But the fact is that it is also the flag of a political movement, and that political movement is Islamism. That is a political movement that seeks to order every aspect of the state and society by Sharia law. There's a reason why people like Sukarno were opposed to hijab, why people like Nasser in Egypt were opposed to hijab. And the reason is very simple. They understood it as being propounded by people who were fundamentally threatened by modernity and were trying to use this to increase the role of religion in the public sphere. So it's a tricky thing. So at the individual level, I think you have to sort of respect choices. But at the same time, I think you have to be cognizant that this is not the equivalent of wearing or not wearing a pair of Ray-Bans. There is also a deeply charged political element to it.
Okay. I will give Karuna the last word. Tavleen, let me bring you in. Hopefully we're all a bit calmer. What about individual choice? What about individual? Do you think these girls should not be kept out of educational institutions? Because even if you are a critic of the hijab, which you clearly are, even if these girls and young women have been conditioned to and now believe it's their choice, why should education be denied to them on this basis is the question.
Why don't you ask the question about why this has suddenly come up? They were going to school before without wearing it. Why has it suddenly come up? To me, this is a political matter, and I strongly object to your lawyer friend over here actually charging people personally. I did not criticize Nargis at all. I don't know where you got that from. I don't criticize anyone personally, but I am appalled at him being allowed to, to say that I cannot say that there is
I didn't allow him to say it. I intervened immediately and said how do I disallow something in a live programming other than to intervene and say let's not personalize it?
No, he said the only reason why I see radical Islam is because for personal reasons. This is not true. I have called out radical Hindutva more times than I can think of. I detest fanatics of any religion. I called out Sikh fanaticism. And to me, this kind of Islam is dangerous. I've seen it happen. I'm old enough to have seen the change in India, in schools, and I don't like it. And that is for me, it is a political issue, hijab, and nothing else.
Anas, very briefly, I think we've all made the point that we disagree with personalizing people who disagree with the hijab and bracketing them, as you have, and I think that's on record in this program. You wanted to say something about Iran, and then I'll close with Karuna.
Yes. Just one last thing. Just like on a matter of religion, the Islam and the Quran mandates hijab, but there is no coercion. There is no punishment in the world if you do not wear it. No one has a right to force anyone to wear hijab. Same as no one has a right to comment on hijab or take away the right to wear hijab. That is the bottom line of what I want to state.
Okay, Karuna, we'll close with you. It is, sorry, okay. You want to say one sentence?
Just one factual correction. In our affidavit before the court and everywhere, the girls have been practicing hijab since a very long time, even before they took admission in those schools and colleges. So it is wrong to say that they were not, they just started wearing hijab in 2021. That is the argument of the state, which is wrong.
Okay. I have to close. And again, I say, I know everybody, I've managed to piss off literally everybody on this program, which comes with walking into the minefield of this. Well, so be it. But Karuna, one of the things when I was talking,
can I just say something very briefly?
Yeah, I'm going to ask you a question only, and you can just couple your points. Yeah, it was just that when I asked her about the Indian context and how she saw this juxtaposition, she said, look, I don't judge anyone, but she said she grew up wearing hijab, right? And she said it was almost like a part of her body since she was a child. And she said that when you've grown up like that, with something being almost an extension of yourself, to be able to step back from it is very difficult, but she doesn't see that as choice. I'm just laying that out there and giving you the last word. Go ahead, Karuna.
Before the mandate that we had to stand up in film theaters and sing the national anthem, I sang it happily and, lovingly for my community and for my country. As soon as there was a misguided judgment by the Supreme Court that was subsequently reversed, right, that became a problem. So the problem here is the compulsion. And whenever you speak to an Iranian woman who is burning her hijab, throwing it into the fire, almost every time, and I've listened carefully, they speak of the compulsory nature of the hijab. The fact that if you have two strands being exposed, as in Mehsa's case, that you can be killed. That is entirely consistent with the compulsion that people in India are attempting to throw off. The compulsion in schools that the completely, according to me, unconstitutional compulsion in schools, saying that you cannot enter unless you wear what we tell you to. So the point is consent, the point is choice. And in very sort of articulate, posh terms, we're hearing on this panel, people saying that, we should, and I'm attempting not to personalize it, I'm really attempting to just address the argument.
Please, it's my request, please do not personalize.
Absolutely.
Yes.
There are, there's a lot of just sort of, logic. There's a lack of logic sort of tumbling into itself into these black holes of illogicisms, right? And you've got a situation where people are saying that people should wear jeans because that is modernity. No, that is not modernity. What is modernity is the ability to be educated, the ability to be economically empowered, the ability to rise to the level of a High Court judge, Supreme Court judge, be in the police, be part of the political process, go to school. And frankly, we cannot look at this dehors the targeting of every single Muslim value under Hindutva. And so the fight here is consistent with the fight in Iran. It is the lack of compulsion.
Okay, we have kind of ended where we began, and before there are more fireworks on this program, and I get sort of accused of having, please nobody. I will say thank you. It has been a difficult program to steer. One has had to hold back on one's own opinions and play the role of a somewhat dispassionate moderator. Not always possible when it comes to the rights of women, but we will leave it there. To Nargis, Tavleen, Anas, Sadanand, and Karuna. Thank you, and to our audience, we hope you enjoyed this uncharacteristically volatile conversation on the Mojo story. We'll see you soon. Thank you for watching.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.